Free agency signings have slowly been trickling in, plus we have a major trade already in the books and another major trade almost in the books, possibly. But I wanted to break down the news that we already have for Dynasty, so let's get right into it. I think the best place to start is just with the Las Vegas Raiders and what they have been just doing in general, because they have been putting in the work early on this offseason with their signings and with trades. There are two big signings so far were Jimmy Garoppolo at 3 years, $67.5 million as their new starting quarterback after releasing Derek Carr. They also signed Jakobi Meyers to a 3-year, $33 million deal as I guess their wide receiver 2 behind Davante Adams. And then they had the big trade that has been finalized, sending Darren Waller to the New York Giants for a 3rd round pick. A lot of stuff has been happening in Vegas, and to be honest, none of it is really enticing to me from a fantasy and dynasty standpoint. I guess if you had Jimmy Garoppolo, there's probably not a better landing spot that you would have liked him to go to than Las Vegas. I mean, other than maybe possibly the New York Jets, but at least you're getting a starter and someone with familiarity with Josh McDaniels' offense, throwing the ball to Davante Adams, Jakobi Meyers, Hunter Renfrow, and having a really good run game with Josh Jacobs. This was about as ideal as it could get for Jimmy Garoppolo for fantasy. I would expect him to be a mid to back end QB2, probably more preferably your QB3 in Superflex. Really no different than what Derek Carr already was in that offense and what Jimmy Garoppolo has already shown to be when he was with the San Francisco 49ers. As for Jakobi Meyers, this was less than ideal, honestly, for fantasy because he is now at best the second best option behind Davante Adams in a Jimmy Garoppolo-led offense. I really honestly don't get this signing as it seems like Myers' skill set overlaps a lot with Hunter Renfro's skill set. So either this pushes Hunter Renfrow out or Myers is now a primary outside receiver. I can't wrap my head around Myers being someone that you want in your starting lineup, even as a weekly flex play. This feels like a Tyler Boyd situation with the upside that Myers is like a lesser version of Brandon Ayuk, which is what we have from Curtis Samuel last year. Personally, I'd be selling for like a mid-second if you can, or a 2024 second. And I know that's going to sting when Justin hears that, but it is the truth. That's the way I see it. And then there's the Darren Waller trade, which I think honestly is a great trade on both sides. For the Raiders, they get a top 100 pick for a tight end who is turning 31 this year and has played 20 games over the past 2 seasons. They could honestly just re-sign Foster Moreau for a much cheaper contract and get like 80% of Darren Waller's production, which honestly, if you're able to add players off waivers right now and Foster Moreau is still available, I would be grabbing him now in case that happens. But from the Giants side, this also makes a ton of sense unless you were a Daniel Bellinger fan like me, but overall the pick that they gave up was the one that they got for Kadarius Toney, and now Darren Waller immediately comes in as the second most talented player in that offense and the unquestionable wide receiver 1 for Daniel Jones. When healthy, Darren Waller is a top 5 tight end of the league and can be a huge security blanket for Jones anywhere on the field. They're taking the swing on him being healthy and not really worrying about his age, which I like from a Giants point of view. I still don't believe, though, that the Giants are done adding receivers. They're bringing back Sterling Shepard. Wan'Dale Robinson will be back from injury. And I'd honestly bet that they used their 25th overall pick on a wide receiver too in this class. But if you've been holding on to Darren Waller just because you couldn't sell him, then congratulations. He's about to see probably 130, maybe even 140 targets if he stays healthy this season. If you have him and you're not competing, I'd be trying to flip him now for like any first if you can get it in 2023, 2024, or even 2025. I would even take an early second in this year's class in Superflex 2, or maybe you can flip him for a young receiver with some upside like a Rashad Bateman, Jahan Dotson type of player. I'd be doing those if you have Darren Waller, but you're rebuilding. All right, moving on. Other free agent signings. Allen Lazard is headed to the New York Jets on a 4-year, $44 million contract to further entice Aaron Rodgers to continue playing and to come to New York. With this signing, I do expect Corey Davis to be cut, as the Jets can save $10.5 million by doing so with almost no dead cap, or either Corey Davis or Elijah Moore could be traded in the deal for Aaron Rodgers and could be heading to Green Bay. Honestly, though, I don't really see much value for Lazard in New York from a fantasy perspective, even with Aaron Rodgers at the helm, because Garrett Wilson is the alpha in this offense. Lazard played behind an alpha in Davante Adams in 2021 and saw only 60 targets in 15 games, which is over 100 fewer targets than Davante Adams that season. Now, maybe the target split is closer between him and Garrett Wilson, but even if you cut 30 targets off of Adams' numbers that year and gave them to Lazard, Adams was still at 140 and Lazard only at 90. But really the whole point of this is that this Jets offense is going to go through Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, and Lazard is just a nice wide receiver 2 in the NFL as like a wide receiver 3 or 4 in fantasy. I really don't see anything more on top of that. To talk about Elijah Moore real quick, there really is no outcome here that is good for Elijah Moore. If he's in New York, then it's not good because I expect he's like the wide receiver 3 at best, and we already didn't really like his role on the team last year as the wide receiver 2. If he's in Green Bay catching passes from Jordan Love and competing with Christian Watson, then that is also not really that good. So Elijah Moore is starting to become like a pipe dream that just may never come to fruition, like a more elitely valued version of Laviska Shenault or Mecole Hardman, because we haven't given up on Elijah Moore yet. But it honestly might be time to just give up on him because it might never happen. According to February ADP, you could flip Elijah Moore for Rondale Moore or get a rookie pick that could give you the shot on a Josh Downs, Zay Flowers, Jalen Hyatt, even a Marvin Mims type. At this point, I don't think it's really that bad of an idea to get off of Elijah Moore for a better upside asset. Rashaad Penny is going to Philadelphia on a cheap 1-year, basically prove it kind of deal. And this would be exciting to me if, one, I didn't believe that Miles Sanders could still possibly return based on how his market looks on like a really, really cheap deal, or two, if I didn't believe that the Eagles would still draft someone even if they do let Sanders walk. But let's just for fun say that Rashaad Penny is the only back that they bring in this offense and it's just him and Kenneth Gainwell. Then yeah, that would be pretty exciting. Penny is a perfect fit for what the Philadelphia Eagles want a running back to do. Just last year, Miles Sanders had almost 1,300 yards and 11 touchdowns on the ground with basically no receiving work. And I think you can argue that when he's healthy, Rashaad Penny is a better runner of the football than Miles Sanders. And if he stays healthy and has Miles Sanders' workload from last year, then yeah, he's a top 15 running back in fantasy. But I just said that I don't think that he gets Sanders' workload, and I also don't think that he stays healthy the entire season, as we've seen him not really be able to do basically his entire career. So if I had Rashaad Penny anywhere, I'm selling him immediately from this signing before the Eagles have a chance to add anybody else. I would take a second for Rashaad Penny this year or next year in 2024. And if you somehow got a first, then you should just be put in jail for highway robbery. That is insane. I would not sell Rashaad Penny though for less than a second because I do like the upside and his value even as a handcuff, in which case he would be one of the best handcuffs in Dynasty on the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's worth keeping to me over just like a random third or fourth if those are the best offers that you are getting. But I think a more underrated and possibly even unnoticed signing that I think has a lot of potential for Dynasty is actually Samaje Perine, who signed a 2-year, $7.5 million deal with the Denver Broncos. This is important because as it stands right now, Samaje Perine is the only notable player in this backfield behind Javonte Williams, as Mike Boone is headed to Houston now and Latavius Murray is still unsigned. If Perine is coming in as the Melvin Gordon role, or maybe the old Mark Ingram role of old in a Sean Payton offense, that can't go unnoticed. At the very least, Perine has shown the ability to be a quality handcuff behind Joe Mixon for the past couple of years, and if he has that same role just behind Javonte Williams, plus the ability to have most of the workload to start the season when Javonte is out and still recovering, that is massive for Dynasty. I would be looking to add Samaje Perine as a throw-in in your next deal right now, just based on that upside alone. Sticking with running backs, the Dolphins also retained both of their guys, signing Raheem Mostert to 2 years, $7.5 million, and Jeff Wilson also to 2 years and $8.2 million. Neither contract to me screams starter money, and I would be shocked, honestly, if the Dolphins don't draft a running back in the second or third round this year. So Mostert and Wilson are handcuffs at best, and I'd be selling either one of them for a third if you can get it right now. Also, speaking of the Dolphins, they also signed Mike White to a 2-year deal worth up to $16 million. And I actually really like this from an NFL and Dynasty standpoint. Mike White has shown to be a really good backup, and had the Dolphins had him instead of Teddy Bridgewater and Skylar Thompson last year when Tua was out, they would have definitely been better on offense. For fantasy, Mike White was amazing as a spot starter for the Jets last year with just Garrett Wilson basically, but now you give him Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, yeah, then I'd be pretty excited about that. So if you have Mike White on your Dynasty roster, you should be feeling pretty good about having him just in case of emergency, either for injuries of your own quarterbacks or just in case Tua does continue to have those concussion injuries and Mike White gets thrust back into a starter role, then you have an extra starting quarterback. But as of right now, it is currently Tuesday night. This is all the news that we've gotten so far, at least from the offensive side of the ball.
Wrong.
All right, literally as I'm editing this, David Montgomery just signed a 3-year, $18 million deal with the Detroit Lions. And this is really weird, but also interesting to me because it verifies the rumors that we've been hearing that the Lions are kind of sick of DeAndre Swift and his inability to stay healthy, but also Montgomery is only getting $6 million a year, only $11 million guaranteed. That is not a big contract at all. And that tells me that Montgomery is coming in as the Jamal Williams replacement, and Williams is being allowed to walk. Don't get me wrong, this is still not good for DeAndre Swift. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if they still draft someone on day 2. But as for Montgomery specifically, I think you have what Williams was last year, maybe a little bit better, because Montgomery can do a little bit more than Williams can just all around as a running back. And maybe he does cut into Swift's role because the Lions are actually done with DeAndre Swift. I don't think, though, that it's really ideal for anyone, but if you have David Montgomery, just hold on to him. Just see what happens in this Lions offense. If you have Swift and you can still get a first, then yeah, I'm out. I'm selling DeAndre Swift for a first right now. What this news does do, though, is open the sell window for Khalil Herbert, because he is, at least currently, the RB1 for the Chicago Bears. And if anybody is willing to give you a first, which I have seen in the trade finder even from just a couple days ago, take that and run. People might be thinking that they're pulling one over on you by buying the Bears starter. And even if that was true, take the first round pick. Even if it was the 201 to like the 2.03 in Superflex leagues, then I would be selling Khalil Herbert and just betting against him, A, being the starter, and B, even if he is the starter, being all that much more than just like a back-end RB2. So as more news hits, we will be covering that as well, even if it's just like a pinned comment to this video or a YouTube post, just quickly breaking down how we feel about it. But for the most part, until some more crazy trades happen, our sights on this channel are set towards the NFL draft and rookie coverage from now through May. So if you're not already subscribed, please do so. And if you're making any trades from this free agency news in your Dynasty leagues, be sure to check out this video right up here first before hitting send on those deals.